I am so thrilled to be here with Kelsey Packwood. I am Kim Vay. I'm the president of the DBT-Linehan Board of Certification, and I'm thrilled and honored to be here to interview and have a discussion with Kelsey around her new film, Borderline. So I'll let Kelsey introduce herself, and then we'll get into a little bit of the details around the film and what inspired her to make this film.
Yes, thanks so much for having me, Kim. I'm an actor, I'm a writer, I'm a producer, I'm a director, and I made a short film that also, I guess, doubles as a pilot presentation pilot for a television series that I've been conceptualizing for the last 4 years about borderline personality disorder. Uh, Borderline is the title because I don't think anything else would fit, and I've been working on this for a really long time, so it's really wild to be 2 days before the release
Yeah.
that we're interview. So it's been like 4 years.
And so what inspired you to create the film?
I I was diagnosed at like a couple years ago, 4 years ago, and I just had known for a really long time that I was going through something. And it was really painful. It was painful for me. It was painful for my family, for partners, for my sisters, for my friends. And I was having a really hard time managing life. I was having a hard time managing like making sure I could get out of bed and go to work every day. I was having a hard time wanting to interact with people, interpersonal relationship problems. And I was really curious and wanting to know, but I just didn't know until somebody mentioned, like, hey, it might be this. And when I Googled it, I was like, that's it. Yeah. So the second that I found out and I finally had like a name for it and I could do more research, which it took a lot of research to really understand it. Um, I I had to I'm a filmmaker. I had to I finally had the story that I've been trying to tell.
So when you got that, sounds like the diagnosis really was able to give you clarity and potential path forward. What, when you first conceptualized this film, what was your idea of like what did you want to make sure that the audience walked away with? Was there a specific point that your initial conceptualization was around that you wanted to make sure they walked away with?
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted to shoot the pilot for as little money as possible, with as little actors as possible, and as little sets, locations as possible, because I wanted it to really be this like stripped away, like day in the life story where we really see what a spiral can be like in a day of one of your worst days when you have BPD, especially the day that you find out you have BPD, especially if you don't have a
When you
support
don't have the
system.
support and the resources around it.
When you're alone and you're going through that, it's very, very frightening because you just don't even know like what to navigate. You don't know the next steps. Like, how do I even like know what this is? And then like, and is today the day that I'm gonna get all the help I need? No. So like, you that night is probably not going to be like a great night for you. So I really wanted to capture what that was like for me when I got diagnosed. Via Zoom and just like having to deal with that by myself because that was COVID time. So like imagine like somebody tells you like you have borderline personality disorder and you're like trying not to cry and then they're like, "Okay, this time's up. See you next week." And then you close the laptop and then you're just kind of like, "What do I do now?" And what I know that I wanted to show is that well, she didn't want to be alone. That's for sure. But she wasn't capable of finding anyone to really stick with her through that day. And so I really wanted the audience to see what the day in the life of somebody going through this emotional turmoil, somebody going through this emotional turmoil, how can they navigate that? But then in the end, when they just simply can't, I wanted people to see like just the smallest acts of kindness, the simplest little connections can actually make such a large difference. And that at the end, what would you have done if you were going through all of those things? What would you do? Like
Mhm.
if you're put in that situation, like any audience member, especially people who don't have BPD. I really wanted to humanize. Hey, this was a really, really hard day, really, really lonely day. Um, I did the best I could. And in the end, like I pushed myself out of my comfort zone and survived. So there's a couple thoughts in there when I
Yeah.
was.
And when you were researching, when you got the diagnosis and then you researched around it, and then you started to have the started to conceptualize, like, how do I sort of make meaning out of this, right? Like one of the DBT skills is making meaning out of a really difficult situation. So like, how do I make meaning out of this? Were there misconceptions that you were like, yes, that's what I need to make sure I debunk, or that's what I need to make sure that I show people. Anything intentional that you put in the film that was specific. I saw the film, so I'm biased towards the amazing work that you did. And so, is there anything intentional that you put in there because your research really related personally to your experience?
It's interesting because I feel like what I really, really wanted to make sure I did was that I captured all the criteria that I had experienced, which was all nine of them. I experienced all nine of them. And if we want to quickly go down that list, fear of abandonment, unstable relationships, lack of sense of self, impulsivity, suicidal or harming behaviors, chronic feelings of emptiness, intense anger, paranoia, dissociation, and just instability. Which could lead to depression, irritability, that lasts like a long period of time. So I just wanted to make sure that when I first did my research and I saw all those criteria, I was like, okay, like I definitely have all these things. I know you have to have 5 out of the 9. So then actually that's what's very interesting is that that's actually means that there's 256 different combinations of the way that borderline personality disorder can present itself. So like, how am I going to tackle a disorder that this broad and misunderstood?
Misunderstood, right? Like that's the key. It's very broad and misunderstood.
Right. Because you think that it's one thing, like you see that anger or somebody who feels suicidal or is experiencing suicidal ideation, like, and then you think, oh, that's BPD. But there's also the other things that we don't see them all like at once. We don't see them all together. And so I just wanted to be as authentic about my own story and myself and what I had experienced, but also make sure that I touched on all the ways in which that this could affect somebody. I mean, I know it's different between men and women, so like I obviously wasn't going to be able to completely showcase what it's like to have BPD as a man, but I think that they say the first 3 years of after getting diagnosed is the hardest. And so I mean, it's been 4 for me. And it was really hard to sift through that research and find you. I mean, it took me 3.5 years to even know that DBT-LBC existed. I really had to dig and do the work because those first search results were very um, discouraging. So I really wanted to make sure that I could bring a full view into this, but in an empathetic way, where you walk away from this realizing like we're humans too. We're human beings. We live on this earth. We have to share this earth with everyone. So if other people can be accommodated, and we have all this research pointing to what this thing really is and why we feel this way, let's have a visual representation to show people. Maybe it'll make it easier for them to have more empathy for people who are emotionally dysregulated.
And I do, the film does do a beautiful job at your work and getting your story out, and then in combination with the film shows like the human side behind the dysregulation, which as a society, I think we are prone to judging people by their face value behaviors and not the human behind them, right? And so I think that's where this film is so important. And I know you worked alongside several experts to as you were making this film, along with NEA BPD. Was there any feedback that you were given through this process that helped, sort of a dual purpose, right? Like not only helped with the film, but helped you personally better understand yourself, right? Because you can research, you can have the Zoom call where they officially give you the diagnosis and then you close the laptop, right? Is there anything that in working with them to help better the film and most accurately portray it for the film that also personally was helpful in your experience and you being able to navigate through this?
You know what's really funny? I like was such a lone wolf throughout this process, and I did the best I could in reaching who I could when I could. So the beginning process, I did reach out to NABPD. Me and Abby had met, and I had sent her the first version of the script, and I think it was about like 8 months from when she got the script to when I had a final film. And we weren't really in contact much between the script being completed, us shooting, which we only shot for 2 days, and like then and I had archival footage and Zoom footage from prior times. But then uh worked to raise the rest of the money to make the final thing. So I think like I went in and I like showed it to NEABPD, and then in the end like I kind of was I didn't necessarily hear the feedback right when I was shooting. I heard the feedback more once I had completed the film. So there was like a lot of time where I was like, oh God, did I do this right? Oh God, I really hope I don't offend anybody. I mean, but I also how it's my real story. So um and so I think that the surprise for me was that once it was completed and I started having like certain experts watch and people with lived experience or family members or nonprofits, and that was what was surprising, was that I've heard over and over again how accurately I portray BPD, which I mean, I guess I'm not surprised because I really understand my disorder. Even if I didn't know what it was and didn't have like all the research, I really understood it. I could tell you all my symptoms before I got diagnosed. But I just didn't know what that meant. I didn't know why it was happening, and why it would happen over and over again. So yeah, I've been so lucky where I've been able to partner with amazing experts like you and like show this film and screen it around the world so far. I mean, where else can I screen it in space? So I don't know why I said so far.
Well, and so you've had how many screenings?
At this point, I've had 6 screenings where I've attended, and then a couple times it's been screened at hospitals and internationally. So as a teaching tool, so maybe like 8.
And what I know, I can speak from a clinician's perspective on the film. And I know you have received a lot of viewer comments from a lived experience.
Yeah.
And the other piece of this is as a clinician, we have to recognize that the client on the other side of us, they're the expert in their history in them, right? And we're the expert in helping you navigate it, but you're the expert in you, which is what makes this film so authentic and vulnerable because you're the expert, right? Like I'm not trying to portray something, you're portraying you in your story.
Yeah.
And what can you share a little bit about like some maybe highlights from some of the viewer comments that you've received? I know you've read some of them to me and they're like really touching, and I hope that they really drive home to you how impactful this film and this work in general, whether it's a film or just you sharing your story.
Yeah, I've been, it makes me like so like full. Because that's who I'm doing this for. I'm doing this for me and I'm doing this for them. I'm doing this for the community who's been suffering and doesn't realize that they have a chance to get better. And so I feel like I've heard a lot of things. I've heard that there's nothing else out there like this that has really been able to capture attention and in a way that is almost disarming for people who would most of the time be very defensive against somebody with BPD. I've actually had some people reach out who tell me that they're family members of people with BPD who are either diagnosed or undiagnosed, and they're either no contact or like they're strained, still talking but strained, and even they are like, wow, like you've really like made me see BPD from an empathetic lens. Like I've never had empathy for a person in my life who's brought me such grief when they were so emotionally dysregulated, whether that was a partner or a parent or a child. And so I feel really honored that like that comes across in the film, and the people who have lived experience, they feel seen for the first time and they don't feel ashamed to have this diagnosis because it's a good prognosis diagnosis. I
Mhm.
mean, you
It is a
literally
very high prognosis diagnosis, yes.
can get better. You can go to psychotherapy and get treatment. You can, you can work towards these things. And so it's actually it that's a huge message that needs to get out there is that with the right education, we will be able to beat this thing. I mean, what is it about 50% full recovery? I was looking at some research yesterday. Um, I think it was Zanarini's research. Um,
It, individuals that complete treatment no longer meet criteria.
yeah, so but like remission versus recovery,
Mhm.
right? Like remission is different, which is remission is when like you are on your way to a full recovery, but you still are like exhibiting that you can have 20 hours of work a week
Yeah.
and that you aren't exhibiting as many of the symptoms for a certain amount of time. And but then recovery is when like you're
You,
fully
yeah, you no
recovered.
longer meet. And it is,
Right.
and it's, it's the work. And this is where I think from a clinician's perspective of being able to recognize like this is, in DBT, this is where we're in it together because you're the expert and you, right? You know what you're the expert, you have the experience. And again, I think that's what hopefully this film also from a clinician perspective comes away from is seeing that the day in a life as
Right.
opposed to just hearing it out, like actually seeing what a day looks like.
Yeah. Yeah, a bad day where you miss your family and you're hungry and you like just want to connect with someone, but nobody picks up the phone anymore. Like they're just tired of hearing the same old story. But for you, it's not the same old story. It's actually like getting worse. Like you're feeling horrible, but then you somehow feel even worse. And so it's how do we get ourselves to that comfort level where we don't feel so horrible? We don't feel like it's getting worse and darker. How do we get to a point where we can soothe ourselves and use the DBT skills or other things, other forms of therapy and treatment to actually um, ensure that we are getting better?
And a big first step of that is breaking down that stigma, right?
100.
Which is what your work is doing.
Yeah, the stigma part, ooh, I have passion about that. It is just so infuriating because it's so misunderstood. It's just there's a reason why we have BPD. I mean, I know that there's genetic factors because if you're born a more highly sensitive person or if you are, if it runs in your family or if whatever childhood environment you're in, if there's trauma and validation there, then you're more likely to have BPD. So if in the beginning of your life you were going through something really hard and you might not have been treated in the ways that were healthiest for you, why then are we punished for the stuff that we endured? When what really needs to happen is everyone needs to be doing the research and accommodating this disorder. I mean, it doesn't happen just because I decided to have it. It happens because a lot of things happened to me, and I'm now willing to educate myself, but the people around me in my community also need to educate themselves. Like
And you're not dysregulated because you want to be dysregulated.
that's literally, I think you couldn't want anything more than to not be like when you are. You're just like, please let me not feel this pain anymore. So yeah, there's things out there that people still aren't quite aware of that once they see this, I think that it will change their view.
From someone with lived experience with mental health, what would you, is there any, this is like probably a pretty broad, bigger question, but is there any condensed feedback that you would give just filmmakers on when I mean there are some, not a film like this, but there are some other films that portray mental health that I think we can have a lot of opinions about. But is there any feedback that you would say that, like, if you were, as someone with lived experience and you were talking to a filmmaker, what is a piece of advice that you would give them in terms of making a film about mental health?
Yeah, well, there's so many different ways that you can, right? There can be the big studios and people who like they find a story and they develop it and they spend a lot of money to do that. And then there can be a tiny little indie movie. This project was totally independent and a very, very small, tiny project that I got to spearhead, which was so awesome that after all the experience I had in Los Angeles and as an actor, and then like, I had experience in the writer's room as a writer's assistant and a showrunner's assistant, and which was right when I decided to make this project because I had just watched my amazing showrunners run a show for an incredible half-hour comedy that with some amazing actors. And so I would say like number one, authenticity is always going to be your friend in these situations. So if you're going to make a story about mental health and you're going to tell a true story, you're more likely to connect with your audience because it's real. Who can tell you it's not real when it did happen to you? So I'd say if we're going the route of indie, like we're probably going to have like those elements that are really, really real and raw versus like a more like commercial film. It might get a little discombobulated throughout that whole system of people that need to approve things and like how you need to be careful of like what you're making for.
Unintentionally driving the stigma.
Well, that and also but it's also because you need to translate it internationally. They really need these films if they're going to make money, they need them to like appeal to audiences of all cultures. So how do you do that with mental health? It's so tricky, which is why I feel like this is such a good idea for a show because if you know borderline, you know borderline. Like if you know the disorder, like it doesn't matter what culture you are in, like what country you're in, you will understand like that pain. So I would say like be authentic, tell real stories. And now that we have like, social media, like you can just post your stuff and it will get seen. So break away from the studio system and make your own stuff and make it authentic and have experts on hand. Like reach out to these experts. They respond. I've sent so many cold emails and that's how I've gotten this far. So like if you don't try, it'll never happen. And I just think that it's just a matter of like if you have like an idea and like you have passion, just go for it. Like the worst is somebody will ignore your email or say like sorry, I don't have time. But then you just keep going. There's 8 billion people on the planet. You can send another email.
What, or is there anything, are there any main points that, again, like as you're conceptualizing and as the film sort of concluded, that you had the thought, like if people take one thing away from this film, if the world was to take one thing away from this film, what do you want them to take away?
You know, you see in the movie, like in the pilot, you see my younger self, which is really me. It's really 5-year-old me. And then we go like back and forth, like between like me at 5 and current day. And um, I really, really wanted people to remember who I am, like you can see how joyful and energetic and creative I was as a child. And somehow along the way, I lost that. But if you can just reconnect to that self of where you weren't convinced to not like be creative. Like I don't know. I feel like in school when they're always telling you like you can't do this, you can't wear a hat, you can't do that, it just kind of takes something out of you. You become just less you. And so I'd say like I want everyone to remember who they were at the core of who they are, and that like we all are here and we all deserve like a good life. And so like let's humanize each other. Let's come together in this really tough time in this world. We need each other more than ever. And I think it's about time that we talk about mental health in a real honest way. I'm no longer going to pretend like I can't talk about like I'm no longer gonna put up with that. I'm going to tell the full truth about what is happening here in our minds, in this research, in this disorder. These personality disorders are somehow so misunderstood in 2025. I mean, if we can create artificial intelligence, why can't we understand borderline personality disorder? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I just saw a Waymo car. Doesn't have a driver in it. It's driving without a driver.
Yes, if we can
I mean,
create
if we can drive cars without a driver, we can educate ourselves on borderline personality disorder and break the
and the
stigma.
mind and how our minds are, we all have a mind. That's the other thing. We all have a mind. Nobody is exempt from suffering. Whether or not you're prolonging suffering because like you've had a really good life and then maybe you don't experience like very like sad like loss and grief until you're older. At some point you're going to experience it, you
Yeah,
know?
nobody goes through life without pain,
Right? So
loss.
some people get like a shot at like the beginning of their life where like they don't go through those traumas. But what about the people who do go through those traumas? We we deserve to get the credit for what we've gone through and then to work together to be to find happiness, you know, and peace.
And to break through the messaging, I think that you're a prime example of the messaging that you have had that when you reached out to several of us, the team that got behind you, that you're not destined to be alone through this, even though historically you have been alone. Right. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes it can feel like, well, I guess I'm just gonna have to figure this out when you don't, right? Like I said to you the other, like you have a team behind
I
you.
and hearing you say that again, I was just like, wow, like it is true. Like I felt that, but then to hear that like this is like real, but we all are noticing like we got a team here now and I mean, you guys have been doing work and research for so long, you know, like this community has existed. I had no idea it existed. And all of you guys knew each other. So I'm the new one. I'm the new one coming into this group. But the fact that like we're all doing our own work to get this message out there. And again, a lot of the clinicians and experts don't have BPD. Some of them do, which is actually something else that I think is incredible. People who have borderline who end up going into the field and helping. Oh, Freddie, are you going to come say hi? Are
Oh,
you
we get
coming?
Freddie.
This is
Freddie.
my emotional support service animal. Hi. Okay. All right. I guess.
Authenticity. Authenticity.
But yeah, it's truly incredible that hi Freddie. Okay. All right. All right.
We're the experts in an area, but we're not the experts in lived experience, right?
Right.
And that's the piece that you're new, but you're still coming in with an expertise that we can't get from a textbook,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like I can't get from a training. I can't get from any research at all, right? Like so that element that I think in research and in even in our own therapy rooms, it can be really missed is that we have two experts sitting in the room.
Yeah.
They're just
Yeah.
experts in two different things.
Well, it feels almost like a puzzle piece. Like we're doing a puzzle and like we've all fit in and we've all done our own work. And that's why I'm just so excited for the future of this project because I know that I won't fail with your guys' help. It's just it's so special and like if I had a thought of what I would have done when I moved to Los Angeles, oh, I thought I would be cast in some like freeform like CW TV show like or something and like that never happened and like for a long time I was like, "Oh, man, like I'm not doing anything. Like I'm not doing what I want to be doing. But then when I took it into my own hands and told my own story, like it's actually even more meaningful because this is like a almost like cinematic universe that I'm creating that like I intend on taking very far. So like I intend on this, like we'll have a series, but then after that, like spin-offs in different countries that can focus on specific countries and that the exact like situations that are going on there so that it could be more helpful for the people who live there where they have borderline personality disorder. And then, I mean, we have a lot of other personality disorders. And so, if we can show that this isn't something that is risky, there's actually a built-in audience of at least a couple 100 million people, if not the people who are indirectly affected by BPD, which like everybody who has BPD has at least 4 or 5 people in their life who are affected by this. So if you do the math, we have an audience of 1 billion. I mean, I've heard that like I don't know if I'm getting the statistics right, but 50% of the people who go into to treatment to inpatient
Have,
or out.
have traits of borderline personality disorder.
So I mean, it's a lot of people, and I mean, this isn't a risk in terms of viewership. I mean, if we can like prove that this is so needed, then the world is definitely ready for the rest of the stories to be told.
So I guess that goes into another question I have is this isn't a one-time thing, right? Like this isn't a one and done for you. This is a project. This is
Oh,
like something that is going to take more than just this film to really get out. And like I said, there's other personalities, whereas there's other cultures that would need to get brought into this. So this is a bigger project
oh
that
yeah.
people can look forward to following.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's the goal. The goal is to go the full distance. Uh I mean a hit TV show usually has 7 seasons. We can go as far as we want. I mean, and then again, it doesn't stop with I think that visual media is the best way to connect with an audience nowadays. So I think that if we want all the research that's being done, like I keep hearing like, well, it's not getting out there. How do we get out to the people? How do we get people who don't know about this to find out about this? So I'd say like visual media first, and then with my work specifically, I will not stop as an advocate. I mean, I want to be an educator and teach. I want to get my master's in psychology. So I definitely like feel like at a certain point, like I will be certified to do all that stuff as well. But there's so, I mean, really, we could invent any kind of thing in this media
Yeah.
in this like we can do anything that we want. And so this is just the beginning. I just need everybody else to be creative with me because I can do a lot by myself as I've proven, but I don't think I can do it all. I need other not a one-time thing. This is the beginning. This is the pilot. This is the entrance into the borderline universe. And then from there, hopefully by the end of this whole thing, everyone everyone's gonna know what BPD is.
So what I know this that making this film and just the whole process over the past 4 years and for you personally, but also, giving feedback to others, how did you take care of yourself? Because we can look at you and we could say, wow, Kelsey put this amazing film together. Look how great the acting is. But it was a personal experience, right? Like, so this wasn't a script that somebody handed you and you practiced and you were able to go on and perform, right? Like, it wasn't performative. It was real. And so with that, how did you take care of yourself? Because I don't want to miss that point because I think we could easily just sing your praises and give you all these attaboys for the work that you're doing and miss the point that it had to be hard.
Yeah, it was definitely not easy. I think that once I had the prospect of this project being something, Like once I knew like no, this can turn into something because I don't think there's anything else like it like at this level. I mean, I've seen documentaries or like an episode here or there and then the stigmatizing episodes which just that doesn't help anything. Um but yeah, I think that like I noticed I didn't really have hobbies. I noticed I didn't really have like things that I like to do. When I was in high school and middle school, I studied theater in college. I did musical theater. I was like obsessed with Broadway and singing, and so I really like thought I wanted to be on Broadway, but I can't dance. So then when I realized that you kind of have to dance to be on Broadway, I was like, oh man. And so then that's when I chose to move to LA. But when you graduate from school, you kind of lose the extracurricular activities. And unless you get a job doing that right away, which getting a job on Broadway is not easy, I haven't done it, then you kind of have to find your own hobbies. And so the ones that I love to do, I couldn't do them at the level I wanted to because I wasn't getting hired to do them. So I kind of lost myself for many, many years. And I auditioned. And so, like, I still was like, there was the prospect of, oh, maybe I'll book this job. But when that plateaued, the writer's strike happened, COVID happened, and it seemed like nothing was happening, I was so devastated. And then I also was like, you know what? I'm gonna make my own thing. And I'm gonna see how far this can take me. So initially, even though it was hard, it actually brightened my day every day and it gave me a purpose. And when I was thinking of like when I was learning everything and heard about like, oh, like you want to create a life worth living, and I felt like my life was not worth living, I I started feeling like it was worth it every day because I was doing something that made me so excited. I had to piece everything together. It took a long time. It didn't happen overnight. And also, I couldn't afford therapy at the time. And I had gone to talk therapy my whole life, like conventional therapy. I really didn't have like the tools or finances to get the treatment that I needed. And then when I was not talking to my family at that time, they couldn't help me. They didn't know how important it was for me to get that help. So, you know, I'm in therapy now. I'm doing trauma work, which I think really is helpful for me since I've been learning a lot of the DBT skills on my own. I think that trauma work has been like, I feel it in my body. So like I feel the need to do that work to like let that go because it feels like it's like almost a what is that a muscle memory.
Yeah.
It feels like it's muscle memory that like I know like how I feel like sometimes in my stomach that's when I'm like nervous or like in my chest that's when I'm anxious or like in my head like sorry there's construction outside. Freddie's like what but it I I definitely I gave myself time to rest, you know. I wrote this pilot for my dad, really. And so him and I hadn't talked in 3 years and when it was done, because I also knew that I didn't want to talk to him until it was done. Once I started, I was like, I need to finish this. So I let myself rest. Dad through my cousin. And when we were able to reconnect, and my mom and him have been doing family connections through NABPD. I mean, my life is transformed. I have a very supportive family now. My mom and my dad are completely
There's
there for
something
me.
exciting coming up too, right? I don't want to spoil it. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
spoil it.
exactly. Yes, very soon. Something exciting, everyone, to pay attention to. So I think it was a combination of things since the therapy was not on the table. It was a combination of things, and and now that I like have this support system, um, that's all I needed really in the first place, and so that's how I took care of myself. I somehow rebuilt my support system from the ground up.
Well, is there anything else that you wanted to add to this?
I feel just so honored to have gotten this far and to be able to reach this amount of people. And thank you so much for believing in the project and for giving me this opportunity to speak to your community. And I hope that we get to do this for a very long time. And um, genuinely, like this whole thing has been so life changing, life saving, and I found myself in this, you know? People who don't feel like they know themselves, people who have borderline personality disorder who feel like so disconnected from who they are and what they like and who they want to become. Uh, spend a little time every day doing something nice for yourself or going on a solo movie date or like going out somewhere and writing in your journal because I promise you if you do it every day, I know it takes a long time, but at the end of the day, like you can find yourself again and or maybe even for the first time. And it is completely possible. So thank you. And I know myself now. And that's the greatest gift that I could have ever.
Yeah. Well, thank you from the community. And when we talk about authenticity, you'll see as this all grows how the DBT community, well, I guess I'll speak for myself, is not actors. So it'll be interesting, like authenticity will shine through when it
Yeah,
comes to this because we don't have that side. But I think that is a takeaway point is that the authenticity is what makes it so powerful because it's not performative.
right. Right.
It's not just something that's performative for an audience.
Yeah, I've been
There's
able to
a
let
behind
go
it.
of that Broadway version of me where I'm like, I want to get that song, like I have to get every note right and every little dance thing right. And no, I'm just showing up as me. I'm just showing up as myself. And I've never been more accepted. I've never had a community before. And it's just beautiful. It's just like people who go through what we go through at the end of the day, like we know. And that therefore that's why we're so open and willing to support each other. So like that's right there hope that like the world needs is that that still exists. It really, really does exist when for a long time I didn't think it did.
Mhm. And in a room, you're the expert in the room with experts.
Right.
The other
Right.
piece, right? Like, yeah. Well, thank
Yeah.
you.
Wow. Who would have ever known I would have been an expert in anything?
That's the old messaging. That's your old messaging coming in.
Exactly. Of course, I have to like add that in there at the very end. No, no, no. I am not surprised. Now that I've known everything I've gone through, I am not surprised that I ended up here, and it all makes sense now. Everything happened, everything needed to happen exactly the way that it happened so that I could have gotten to this point. So I wouldn't have changed anything at this point if it means that this will help even one family, one person. Like it's all worth it.
Well, thank you for all the work, and we look forward to years more of the work.
Yes. Freddie, wake up. Say bye.
Pretty well sleep.